So I was at BBH for 12 years. I worked with and for those guys from the start of their agency. And I was at Lowe for 12 years as well. Lowe had Spink in London and then eventually president of Lowe Worldwide. I was that person that decided it would be a good idea to move Matthew Bull to London and make him CEO of the London agency with attendant consequences. The last time I was in Durban, it was actually to do some consultancy work. This was in 2003, I think, with Unilever and with President Mbeki at Zimbali Lodge. It was actually one of the best experiences of my professional career. It's the only time I've had a head of state taking notes while I was talking. And I hope it didn't do any lasting damage to your beautiful country. So, I'm sure you guys all know a little bit about D&AD, although Cannes has been mentioned rather too many times for my taste today. We're an award show. Unlike Cannes, we use the money we make to put back into the industry, a bit like the Loeries, actually, but global. We seek out and nurture new talent, and we campaign for better diversity and gender equality, something that might be an issue, judging by the speakers here today. And I'm going to steal... Yeah. Both things, actually. But I'm going to steal 2 minutes at the beginning of this for a quick D&AD commercial, if Andrew doesn't mind. So we are turning our judging week, which is in April, like yours, actually, into a festival of creativity, forward-facing, accessible, and located in our own backyard in East London. We trialled it last year. It went down brilliantly. And I just wanted to say you're all invited. Come along and see what it's like. Here is a little taster, I hope. Oh, going back.
As you know, this is where the action is. This is the place where good work gets thoroughly considered and great work gets pencils.
For me, in America, it's the gods of radio. I think it's a medium that's been honed and crafted and sustained, I think, in America, because I think local radio is such a phenomenon.
I think that there's a sensitivity that women show towards illustration that's really vital for the craft. So in terms of equality in this category in particular, I feel as though it's pretty evenly represented, which is great.
Well, lunch was wonderful. We had Thai curry, green curry with chicken. 3 of us did. 2 had it with beef. 2 had the vegetable curry, while others had assorted noodle dishes. I don't know what's happening.
I don't know what that was about either. I'm going to talk about the value creativity adds because that was Andrew's brief. But I'm going to talk about it in the context of something that's kind of important for all of us, and that is the fate of the Earth. I told you this was serious. I hope that doesn't sound too apocalyptic, so please bear with me as we get into this. So Earth Overshoot Day was yesterday, and in the year 2000, it was October the 5th. We're already, as you all know, using up the planet's natural resources at a much faster rate than we can replenish them. Today, humanity uses the equivalent of 1.5 Earths to provide the resources we need and to absorb our waste. And moderate UN scenarios suggest that if current population and consumption trends continue, we'll need the equivalent of 2 Earths by 2030. Unfortunately, of course, we only have 1. So turning resources into waste faster than waste can be turned back into resources puts us in what is called global ecological overshoot, hence Earth Overshoot Day. And this rate is going to accelerate. The developed world can't say to the developing world, you can't have what we've got. It's estimated that the global middle class, those people with more than $10,000 of disposable income, is now 1.5 billion and growing at a rate of 10% a year. They want cars, refrigerators, air conditioning, TVs, and computers. You know all this stuff. So all the evidence shows that national governments and supranational organizations can't do anything, or if not anything, enough about this. Successive global treaties have been broken, and President Obama's recent announcement notwithstanding, although God bless him for making the announcement, every target on emissions and other metrics has been missed. We have only a 50% chance of keeping the Earth's temperature within the +2 degrees centigrade limit, beyond which climate change and its attendant horrors are completely beyond our control and irreversible. That's unless you believe the people being very appropriately mocked in this fantastic piece from Barton F. Graf 9000.
Andrew. Sandy. Ivan. Katrina. Since 1954, the World Meteorological Organization has been naming hurricanes and tropical storms. But what did these people do to deserve having their names attached to this? As climate change continues to create more frequent and devastating storms, we propose a new naming system. One that names extreme storms after policymakers who deny climate change. We propose something like this.
Senator Marco Rubio is expected to pound the eastern seaboard sometime early tonight. Windows are being boarded up and grocery stores are virtually empty as Marco Rubio threatens everything in his path.
Now, Michelle Bachmann is on the way, folks, and specifically the eye of Michelle Bachmann will be hitting Florida in a few hours.
Congresswoman Michelle Bachmann is incredibly dangerous. If you value your life, please seek shelter from Michelle Bachmann.
Senator David Vitter is turning out to be one of the hugest and costliest disasters in American history.
David Vitter is literally lifting boats out of the water and tossing them onto the land.
In New Orleans, the levees that were built to stop Hurricane Colin Peterson have been obliterated. I'm here at the North Pier where Speaker John Boehner is really doing a number on this coastline. John Boehner is just destroying this town.
Local animal shelters are under pressure as thousands...
You get the idea. I'm sure you've all seen it. Some of these people, by the way, are Republican Party presidential candidates, so that's a worry. So, meanwhile, global business organizations, big multinational brand owners, retailers, technology companies, automotive manufacturers, are engaging with these issues. And many, in increasing numbers, are responding, trying to reduce their footprint, trying to treat their suppliers properly, rationalize their supply chains, build better businesses based on better practices. They are, in the immortal words of Lord Leverhulme, who was the founder of the British part of Unilever, trying to do well by doing good. I'm sorry, I'll get the hang of this in a minute. Leverhulme believed, back in the second half of the 19th century, that his business would do better than his competitors if he had a happy, well-housed, well-fed, and educated workforce. And he built Port Sunlight on these convictions and did indeed prosper. And his idealism is, in many ways, still baked into Unilever's business philosophy today. They have been massive supporters of something I'm going to come on to talk about in a second, the white pencil. However, his view did not gain universal acceptance, far from it. And 100 years later, Milton Friedman would say, the only responsibility for a business is to grow its profits. Now, Milton may have been misunderstood, but the unbridled pursuit of growth and profit at the expense of everything and anything else is what ended in Lehman Brothers and a global financial meltdown, caused, in large part, many people would argue, by Friedmanism. So fortunately, big company CEOs like Paul Polman, Mark Zuckerberg, Marisa Mayer, Richard Branson, Bill Gates are in the vanguard of this corporately and socially responsible business evolution. And it's here, maybe, that some sort of salvation lies. Big business has started, slowly, to get its act together. Not all of it, but in enough numbers for one to be able to hope that when the sustainability agenda intersects completely with the profit agenda, and the right thing to do becomes the only thing to do commercially, we'll be in with a chance. Of course, these company CEOs haven't become philanthropists overnight. They have shareholders and boards to answer to, and shareholders and boards demand growth and increased profits. But all business has a requirement for growth hardwired into it. A growing population and affluent middle class, creating an inescapably increasing demand for consumer and other goods in a world where resources are depleting and the climate is changing, is surely an insoluble problem. Not so. Our industry and we've heard a lot about how wonderful it is in many respects during the course of the day, is about repurposing problems into solutions. More of that in a moment. However, it's not just about sustainability and climate change. It's about the social, political, and cultural context in which we operate as well. And this has also been touched on. The other part is, as Thomas Piketty, a French economist, and others are insistently pointing out, is that inequality is now greater than it's ever been in human history. And without going into detail here, we've created a situation where the competition for land, food, water, healthcare, freedom from oppression, resources, and a standard of living somewhere above the bare minimum of surviving, or not, from day to day, is going to erupt into conflict. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but soon. Now, in truth, if we're to resolve these issues and survive as a species, never mind all the other species who co-inhabit the planet, it won't be business acting alone that gets us out of the hole. Governments will have to get their acts together. Technology will have to help us find new sources of renewable energy and ways of growing food. We'll have to control population growth and find new ways of managing global problems to successful outcomes. What the hell has all this got to do with me, you're maybe asking? I just make ads to sell stuff, and that's a very respectable view, coherently expressed by the head of Ogilvy, Germany. He said, Stefan Vogel said, the creative industry is not here to save the world. The creative industry is here to raise awareness of brands, to give them unique attitudes, to turn customers into fans and products into fetishes. We sell or else, as David Ogilvy put it. Well, with respect, Stefan, that is wrong. We, in the advertising, design, and communications industry, have a role to play, a bigger role in this hypothesis than we realize, and certainly bigger than the role we're playing at the moment. Here's why, in my humble opinion. We are experts in creating behavior change. Now, often that is just about persuading people to choose brand X instead of brand Y, but think of all the game-changing public service, fundraising, consciousness-raising, political, health and safety, and charity campaigns you've ever seen that have caused you to change your mind about an issue, put your hand in your pocket, take exercise, wear a seatbelt, whatever. Think of the wonderful work TBWA Hunt Lascaris and others have done to effect peaceful change in your own country. Advertising played a big role in getting Maggie Thatcher elected, whatever you might think about that as a Brit, and Obama. And advertising drives the charity juggernaut that is Comic Relief and thousands of other charities across the world. It underpins both democracies and tyrannies. It can be used for great good and huge evil. And we have to accept we are in possession of very powerful weapons. By the way, none of this is new. Most people have never heard of him, but there was a great advertising man called Howard Locke Gossage, who operated in the 50s and 60s in what was then the advertising backwater of San Francisco. He worked initially for commercial clients, but he got a bit bored with that. He turned his genius to causes. He was creating special interest communities around issues 30 years before the internet allowed us to do this online. Amongst other accomplishments, delivered, I have to say, with almost casual brilliance, he saved the Grand Canyon from being flooded by greedy power companies, discovered and launched an obscure Canadian academic called Marshall McLuhan, helped found and christen Friends of the Earth, and ran the Summer of Love in San Francisco from his agency, The Firehouse. He's actually hero-worshipped by a lot of people who we ourselves have come to admire, people like Jeff Goodby. And I don't know if Chuck's still here, whether he can confirm or deny this, but rumor has it that Crispin Porter, when they got a bit stuck on a project, would ask themselves, what would Howard do? So there's a good book on him by my mate Steve Harrison called Changing the World is the Only Fit Work for a Grown Man, which I highly recommend, especially if you buy any or some of what I'm saying today. So we don't just sell toothpaste and build websites. The skills we develop in solving clients' problems, however mundane, give us the creative, strategic, and executional skills to address any problem using those skills. What we do has immense power. At D&AD, we run a season of President's Lectures every year. Big names like David Bailey, like Oliviero Toscani there, Tony Kaye, Philippe Stark is coming up in September, Alan Parker, David Putnam come and talk to big audiences like this, 1,000 strong. And they're inspiring. and none more so than a talk this year from the worldwide CCO of Dentsu. And this is what Yuya Fuakama, says about it. He talks about this: through advertising, we built skills to find the issue, discover insights, create ideas, and execute the final output. People who have these skills can change the world for the better through any kind of work in any way. He thinks agencies can and should be able to turn their skills to solving any problem, whether that's running Japan's 2020 Olympic program, including designing and building the stadium, although that's run into a slight brick wall at the moment, to turning the accumulated sat-nav power of the country's Honda cars into a life-saving force after the tsunami of 2011. So Yuya doesn't have any kind of cringe factor that maybe the agency business has developed in response to the continual onslaught of procurement and bullying clients. I'm sure any clients present here are not bullying, but some are. This is a big issue. There's a man called Josh Sklar who wrote a book called Digital Doesn't Matter and Other Heresies last year. And he interviewed a lot of mainly US-based advertising and client people, and his conclusions are actually gloomy. And I don't want to be gloomy, I don't want to end on that note, but he believes that the sheer appetite for content that the internet has created has effectively commoditized creativity and craft, the very things that we're here to judge, celebrate this week. That because a lot of big data-driven comms mindlessly chases us around the internet in the wrong-headed belief that because we once bought a pair of cheap chinos online, we will undoubtedly want to buy more cheap chinos every time we look at our Facebook page. Because we don't care about the quality, the people being forced to churn this stuff out in agencies don't care either, is his hypothesis. And because quality matters less, clients don't want to pay as much. And with the net result that life in a lot of US and other agencies has changed. Less talent, working harder for less money. Profit margins in UK agencies have just hit their lowest level for 7 years in an environment where media spend is increasing fast. And this may or may not, but I suspect may sound familiar to some of you. Now, I've gone too far. I know I sound a bit like an old fart here, and you'll have to forgive me because I am. But this has resulted in an erosion of trust. There was a time when clients wanted their agencies to challenge and surprise them. They trusted their recommendations and hired them to do the things they couldn't do, to supply the creativity, energy, passion, and innovation to power their brands and businesses. I had the privilege of running the Levi's account at BBH in London in the 80s, back in the good old days. We made 14 commercials in 9 years, and during that time we presented 15 scripts to the client. Of course, we wrote hundreds, but that's the point. We had the resource, the dedication, the time, and a succession of great, and as it turned out, highly successful clients' trust. We also didn't do pitches and only ever presented one idea, to good points from Ali this morning. We're also independent, which helps, but maybe that's a subject for another seminar. Of course, I'm not saying this never happens today, but the very best agencies still do it, but not as many and not as much. Now, I want to look more closely in this last few minutes at the whole issue of doing well by doing good, of ethical marketing and business, and the fact that for many big companies, doing the right thing is increasingly the right thing to do for the consumer, the supply chain, the shareholders, and the planet. At D&AD, we had our 50th anniversary 4 years ago, and some very clever people, including the then president, Rosie Arnold, who's from BBH, and our next president, Andy Sandos, came up with a thing called the white pencil. We wanted to establish a new award, the first in D&AD's history, actually, to shine a light on the growing trend for businesses to seek to do well by doing good. It's now the fastest growing category in our awards, and in my humble opinion, the most important thing D&AD does alongside our New Blood program. So the white pencil is about encouraging and awarding brands and their agencies who are looking to grow those brands and businesses, but in a way that benefits everyone involved. And if everyone, consumer, supplier, retailer, employer, employee, benefits, then actually the motivation becomes irrelevant. And in the end, everyone will have to join in or see their businesses diminish and eventually disappear. I'm just going to play you a couple of this year's white pencil winners. And here's one that I suspect you'll all have seen, but we'll watch it again.
Show me what it looks like to run like a girl.
Hair.
Show me what it looks like to fight like a girl. Now throw like a girl.
Aw.
So do you think you just insulted your sister?
No. I mean, yeah, insulted girls, but not my sister.
My name is Dakota, and I'm 10 years old.
Show me what it looks like to run like a girl. Throw like a girl. Fight like a girl. What does it mean to you when I say run like a girl?
It means run fast as you can.
Yes. It's great stuff. I'm not going to play this one. I'm going to play you my favorite example of this, which is actually Unilever's Lifebuoy campaign in India, which has substantially grown Lifebuoy's volume in that country. But they've done it by giving the brand a stunning purpose, which is to eradicate infant mortality under the age of 5 in first one Indian village, and then all of them. And this is a great example of what I mean by the intersection of the sustainability and the commercial agenda. They've got the things perfectly aligned. It's working for everyone concerned.
Well, according...
மகன் வளருகிறான் உள்ளங்களிலே இன்பம் பெருகிட மனதில் நிறைகின்றான் தாயும் தந்தையும் விரும்புவதெல்லாம் ஒன்னேதானுங்க ஐயா ஒன்னேதானுங்க கண்ணுக்கு கண்ணான தான் பெத்த பிள்ளை துள்ளி விளையாடியே மனதை மகிழச் செய்யணுங்க மகிழச் செய்யணுங்க தெய்வம் தந்த செல்வமையா நான் பெற்ற செல்வமையா ஆரோக்கியமும் அறிவும் பெற்று வளர்ந்துட்டானையா மனம் மகிழ்ந்தோமையா நாமே மனம் மகிழ்ந்தோமையா இந்த மகிழ்ச்சியின் வேதனை எதுவும் மறந்திடும் ஐயா ஐயா நாளொரு மேனியும் பொழுதொரு வண்ணம் என் மகன் வளருகிறான் உள்ளங்களிலே இன்பம் பெருகிட மனதில் நிறைகின்றான்
मेरा बच्चा 5 साल का हो गया।
इतना सब 5 साल में कौन सी बड़ी बात है?
बड़ी बात है मैडम, ये गुंडापा का पहला बच्चा है जो 5 साल की उम्र तक पहुंचा है।
क्या?
I like that a lot. The reason it hasn't got any awards from D&AD, at any rate, is that the creative director of Loeries India, who's a great man called Bulky, doesn't enter awards. Fair enough. So there's another kind of related elephant in the room here, and which I want to touch on before moving on to some of the things I think we should be doing as an industry. I'm privileged to visit a lot of agencies around the world, and they all say the same thing. It's harder and harder to find the right caliber of young talent and to keep it. And there was a great example of this on the speaker's rostrum earlier today. I know he won't mind me saying this because I asked him, and because he's on our board of trustees, but Steve Vernakis is an incredibly talented and experienced creative person. By the way, we should all be using Steve's photographer, actually. That's kind of good. He now works for Google, and he and a lot of people like him see a better future for creativity in technology companies than they do in the agency business. It's a huge, huge problem in the States, and it's becoming one everywhere. At D&AD, our main activity in support of our Celebrate, Inspire and Enable Creative Excellence mission, apart from the awards themselves, is the New Blood program. And a key part of the program is our New Blood Academy, where our student pencil winners spend 2 weeks in an intensive boot camp designed to prepare them for life in the professional industries. And we asked them this year and last what kind of industry they wanted to work in. And they used words like brave, truthful, and transparent. But what became very clear is that they want to be able to do work that has a purpose beyond profit. Not all the time, but some of the time. And they built this sort of creative game plan, which I'd be happy to share with anyone. I would argue strongly that the business is failing on both these scores at the moment. It's not equipping itself properly to help its clients deal with the issues of sustainability. And as a consequence, we're failing to take up a huge opportunity that exists for us right now to get back up the food chain, recreate a trusting and productive relationship with clients who are desperately seeking advice on how to confront and capitalize on the new reality. And if we don't, you can be sure the slack will be taken up elsewhere. In addition, we have to create a working environment that attracts young talent, the same talent that is currently looking, in many cases, far outside our business for its fulfillment. A big part of this is diversity as well, and I can promise you that the advertising business in all the markets I visit suffers from the same thing. It's very middle class. It's very, very difficult for people from underprivileged backgrounds to break into. And D&AD is also pledged, as I'm sure the Loeries are as well, to doing something about that. So here, very humbly offered, are some things that this observer believes we have to do. And the first thing is get our act together. We have to understand that the marketing community is serious about doing well by doing good, and that clients will seek advice where they can best find it. If the ad community doesn't get its act together, it will be media companies, management consultancies, and designers, who, by the way, have been thinking about this stuff for a lot longer than we have, who will take up the slack. We recently made a film at Judging. In fact, it was the April before last. And we took the opportunity of having 200 very senior creative people, ECDs and CCOs from around the world, to ask them a question. And the question was, what does climate change mean to you and your agency? And this was the answer.
So, yeah, what does climate change mean to you?
Change of climate.
It's probably quite a big question, really, isn't it?
Climate change. Well, that's a good question, and also a difficult one.
It means that things might change in a way that's beyond our control.
They're going to sort it out eventually, like science will find a way to sort it all out.
We talk about it with no depth whatsoever.
To be fair, I don't think it's talked about anywhere.
What we're seeing now is signs of a potentially horrific future that my wonderful children will have to endure.
I think a lot of us don't know what to do.
So, and there's more to it. Now, that film is in no way intended to point a finger at those individuals who are all fantastic people putting their time in the service of D&AD. But the answer to the question, what does climate change mean to you or your agency, is not very much. So we're not even discussing it in our own organizations. And that's my second point, actually, which is that we have to put our money where our mouths are. The senior people that run businesses, that advise other businesses, have a responsibility to put their own houses in order before they dispense that advice. And this means all the boring stuff like auditing practices to make them as sustainable as possible. There are plenty of people who have more experience of this than you or I do, and they're worth listening to. The third thing is join a coalition of the willing. No one is going to solve all this on their own. And the example set by the tech and startup communities is a good one, where sharing, partnership and collaboration are the norm, usually, and generosity of spirit usually prevails. So we have to create open source solutions that benefit the community as a whole, something that I think is sadly slightly counterintuitive in our very friendly but very competitive industry. And fourthly, and crucially, we need to do this. We need to create new measurement, payment, and incentive systems. As well as new strategy tools and capability building, we need to find new ways to measure the economic benefits of more sustainable business practices, what people are calling the purpose dividend. Our clients need to be able to demonstrate that doing the right thing is the right thing to do commercially, and the ad business needs new payment and incentive mechanisms that recognize and reward agencies' contributions in this new arena. The ad business has, in its 180-odd year history, succeeded in inventing two really bad payment systems, commission and cost plus, so perhaps we shouldn't hold our collective breaths. But research companies are beginning to act on measuring the purpose dividend, and although it does sound a bit dull, apologies for that, we see that as being crucial to this thing gathering proper momentum. And the fifth thing is adopt a youth policy. It may sound trite. Some other speakers today have, I think, touched on this as well. It's often the younger people within our companies who are more aware, passionate, committed, and able to address these issues than older employees and colleagues who've grown up in a different culture and a different environment. And once again, I think increasing the diversity of intake into our agencies is crucial to successfully implementing this. And the sixth thing is seizing the moment. As we've discussed, ad agencies were once, still are sometimes, the trusted advisors of their clients. And one of the reasons was that they experimented, researched, trawled the world for inspiration and cool new ideas, and habitually took the initiative. They had what were effectively R&D budgets and seriously deep and broad talent pools. And the best agencies obviously still think and behave this way, but a lot have had precious resource eroded by the eternal negotiation with client procurement, and they've ended up, in many cases, in a place where they struggle to get the day job done. I recently heard a very senior chief marketing officer, actually from Unilever, say that she was fed up with hearing ad agency creative directors trying to persuade her to buy a piece of work for her brand that might have been fit for purpose in 1995. That is a damning indictment. The positive news here is that there's still an opportunity to lead the charge. It won't happen when we're still using tools and vocabulary invented in the 60s, and where a lot of the culture and behaviors still have more in common with the Mad Men era than we'd like to think. So, to summarize, business has a responsibility to behave more ethically and to grow sustainably, with the interests of the planet paramount and baked into growth plans. The advertising business has a responsibility to help its clients do this, precisely because our skills, creativity, innovation, understanding of technology, process, and ability to execute add up to an indispensable requirement at this time, which is creating behavior change. Depressingly, we're not, at the moment, equipping ourselves with the language, the tools, and the processes to make this indispensability stick. I think clients are ahead of us. People like Unilever definitely are, and yes, it is partly their fault. Additionally, we need to make sure that we can continue to attract the best creative talent by providing that talent with the opportunity to work in a business that respects their concerns, uses their skills, and builds purpose into their professional lives. I apologize for the over-seriousness of the last 10 or 15 minutes. I'm an optimist. I personally believe these things can and will happen, but there's a lot of work to be done. I thank you very much for listening. Thank you.